All right. Hello, hello, hello. I am Marlene Barlett, and I just wanted to say hello before I start sharing my slides with you, so you could see my face a little bit. And I am with BeWhoYouReallyAre.com. And today we're going to be talking about, when it comes to love and direction, we're all going in circles. And I was being a little silly here because I like to play with words. We're going to be talking about circles, but not so much in going in circles as in frustration, although it certainly can be, but more about, if you look at the human design mandala, it's a circle, and that's how we kind of represent the sun as it moves through each of the 64 hexagrams. It kind of goes in a circle, even though in reality we are circling the sun. And so we're going to be talking about the gates from the G center, the identity center, which have to do with love and direction. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And then this whole idea of cycles, so not so much circles, but cycles, and how those can be really useful for us in lots of ways and how they show up throughout our lives. So a little bit about me first. This is my chart. I am a 3-5 generator or alchemist. I have emotional authority and have quite a bit of definition in my centers, as you can see. But I have always been pretty analytical and practical, but also at the same time interested in a little woo and love to have fun and be light, but also go really deep. So I've always been into patterns and puzzles and things like that. I love sacred geometry. I love learning just anything. And I actually was a math major. I know most people kind of cringe or like, oh, have a degree in math, like, oh, it's awful. But I found it fun because to me, it's like a language, and I've always enjoyed languages. I studied a lot of languages. I studied French, Spanish, Russian, a little bit of Italian. Can I speak them all? No, especially not the Russian anymore, but it was so fun because it was a whole different alphabet. So I just love playing with things like that. And then I discovered hand analysis actually over 10 years ago. And it was at a time when I was feeling quite stuck, just kind of lost, really. Talk about direction. I didn't feel like I had much direction, wasn't feeling the love. But mostly it was because I had created a life that wasn't in alignment with who I was. And I was sort of doing what was expected and what I thought I should do. And it just, I felt like I was just slowly withering away because it wasn't bringing me joy. It wasn't who I really was. And so I realized a lot of things needed to change, and it really got me going on my personal growth journey. So I was so fascinated once I had my hands read by how accurate it was and how helpful it was for me that I eventually decided to study that to go along with my coaching training as I was trying to figure out, what do I really want to do with my life? And it just was so helpful with clients and with myself and just understanding people, because it's another thing I love is, just what makes us tick or talk or, how we behave, how we respond, how we react, our conditioning, like all those things. It's just fascinating. We're all so different, but yet also the same. And then I discovered human design, and it was just like, another tool and language and thing to play with all these patterns and cool information. And so because I love to see patterns and see how things work together, I started looking at, like, I wonder how human design and hand analysis can fit together. They certainly complement each other. Lots of modalities do. So it's not like they go against each other. They just sort of add flavor and nuance and color. But at the same time, I was wondering, but are there certain things that line up? Like, if you have this, you probably have that, or, so I'm just starting to look at that. But one of the key pieces that I thought would be fun to look at is called the Life School in hand analysis. And before I do that, I'm going to start with human design. I'm going to start with the G center which in the quantum human design language from Karen, she calls it the calibration center. And, the G, I don't know for sure where that name came from, but I like the idea that it's like the shape of a nautilus, right? Which looks kind of like a G, because that goes back to sacred geometry. And, but the G center, it's like, it is our center. It's our identity, our self, how we define ourselves or recognize ourselves. And I was just looking at this mandala, this wheel, and realized like, oh wait, what are these 8 yellow spokes? And then of course realized they're all the gates from the G center, and they form are the love gates, and which make up the vesicle of love, incarnation cross, and the other 4 are direction gates, which make up the cross of the Sphinx. And so that in itself is fascinating to me, right? That they really divide up into quadrants and then eighths. And those quadrants, the first 4, it's actually the direction gates. The direction gates, I can't click on this while I'm talking. The direction gates they fall, or the sun activates them at the start of each season. And, winter, spring, summer, fall. And then the 4 love gates are activated at the midpoint of each season. And there are various festivals and celebrations that occur at those midpoints. And so, that just got me thinking about these patterns and how important these 8 gates are, and how we can use them as we sort of mark time, as we go through the year, time that we can use to kind of just look at our lives. It's like a reminder to check in with ourselves and see, where we're headed, what our intention is, what our purpose is, and also how we're connecting with ourselves, with love, whether it's with ourselves, with others. And I think with both of those, with direction or with love, you can look at, kind of the inner and then the outer. So just kind of looking at how am I doing in that area? What's next for me for this, 8th of the year, we'll say. But I think it's a nice way to remember to check in with yourself in that way. And it can be easy to remember because it's the solstices, the equinoxes, and then these midpoints like May Day, around May 1st, which is like all about fertility and growth. Like, you can actually penetrate the earth now. So it's this idea of fertility and new things being born. And then in the middle of the summer, it's around August 1st. I think that's Lammas Day. I don't know of much that actually normally gets celebrated then. A lot of people are on vacation and enjoying their time. Of course, I'm talking Northern Hemisphere here. So if you're Southern Hemisphere, it's a little different. It's the opposite. And then in the fall, we have around Halloween, or All Saints Day, or Samhain. And then in the winter, it's around February 2nd, 1st or 2nd, so that's Groundhog Day. So it's just, we have historically celebrated these times of the year. And of course, as an agrarian society back in the past, it was important. We needed to know these times of the year. We needed to pay attention to what was happening with nature and the weather and the ability to sustain ourselves with crops. And so I think, a lot of that has been lost as we have all these wonderful amenities and we're able to live very comfortably and have what we want to eat all year round, regardless of the weather, right? It doesn't matter what season it is, and we can stay safe and warm or comfortable regardless. Most of us can. And it allows us to forget to be connected to nature and to these cycles. And I think these cycles are really important. We even are able, we have lighting. And so it doesn't matter when it gets light or dark, right? But it used to, everything was done by these cycles, how much light you had in the day or didn't have. and what food you could get at different times. And so, so I think it can be really helpful to look at these things in our lives and see, you know, how are we impacted or not, and how much are we in alignment, not just with the seasons necessarily, but with anything in our lives that we want to be aligned with, and what cycles are there, and are we flowing with them, or are we kind of fighting against them? So, you know, I think nature just has so much to show us about life, and about change, about transition, you know, energy and flow and patterns. And then within all of that, there's math, you know, it can be mathematically explained. There are fractals, there's sacred geometry, there are all these things in nature that just reinforce these patterns and how important they are. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but I just wanted to look at these gates of the G center. So we have the 4 love gates, the 46, the 10, the 15, and the 25, and they kind of go through body. We have the love of the body, the love of the self, the love of humanity, the love of spirit, and then the quantum human design names embodiment, self-love, compassion, and spirit. And so if we think about, you know, I like looking at patterns. So lots of times there are these groups of 4, right? 4 types of this, 4 types of that, 4 seasons, 4 directions, 4 elements. And so we can say earth, air, fire, and water here. We can also look at body, mind, heart, and spirit. Yeah, so for example, 46 could be body, obviously, love of the body, yeah, embodiment. And then the 10 could be love. This is about self-love, so the heart, right? And then 15 can be the mind, and I'll explain more about why I would attach that or link that with the mind. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the 25, spirit. So mind, body, heart, mind, and spirit here. And then the 4 directions, the same thing. We have the 2, the 7, the 13, and the 1, but we can still, I've got them in the same order. So I'm looking at the 2 being related to the body, and this is receptive or allowing. And then 7, the army, interaction, collaboration, being the heart, coming together, working together in love. And then 13, the listener or the narrative, the mind, telling a new story. And then 1, creative or self-expression. We have purpose. And this is spirit. This is like, you know, I think of it as co-creation. It's like creating through spirit to really fulfill your purpose and be in your purpose. So those are the 8 gates we're going to talk more about. And just as I was saying, there are all these cycles and phases and seasons and patterns, right? And within those are themes, and often very important, big themes in life, and the elements, the directions, different energies. So we can talk about those, and I am going to talk more about that in a minute. But I like to look at the G center or the calibration center as our internal compass, right? It's offering us opportunities to course correct or recalibrate all the time in relation to how connected and aligned we are to ourselves and others, and how connected and aligned we are with our intentions and purpose, you know, where we're going, what it is we're trying to do or be. Lessons from nature, as I was saying, you know, I think we can really learn a lot about transitioning, and in our society, we often don't take the time to really honor and recognize certain milestones, thresholds. We do sometimes, you know, and I think that's why we have stuck to certain traditions like, you know, birthday celebrations and engagement parties and baby showers and new, like a welcome housewarming party. We have various types of ceremonies for certain things. We have, you know, retirement parties, we have graduations, right? There are all these things that we do celebrate and we do mark. And it's a way to bring people together in that celebration to join, and also to really, I think, honor the transition that's happening, because any of those things that we're celebrating, it's a milestone, or it's, it's going to be a change. So something new, something's ending, something's beginning. And I think it's really important to recognize those things, and not just the big happy ones, right, which is what we tend to celebrate, but to also honor and recognize the more challenging changes in life, and to give ourselves the space and the time to honor those things, to grieve. Our society doesn't really, at least in Western society, we don't give a lot of space for grieving. It's like you have a little bit of time and then, okay, get on with it, right? Move on, keep living your life. And I think it needs to be okay for it to take whatever time it takes for it to express in whatever way it expresses, and for us to support one another through these transitions in life, these big events, or small. They don't have to be huge, but they can impact us in huge ways. Often it's things we want, like a new job, or a child, getting married or going off to school, right? And we're really happy about it. And it also means we're letting something go. And there can still be grief, even when it's something we want and we're excited and happy about. And so I think that's a piece that often gets missed, is every time we're starting something new, we're also ending something else. And there can be grief or sadness associated with that. And if we allow ourselves to go through the letting go and the grief and whatever else comes, then we leave space, we open up space for other things to come in, for whatever's new. And then there's not so much possible friction or, conflict, maybe, if we're still holding on to something, to have all this emotion stored in our bodies, all this mental stuff that we just haven't worked through. We haven't let ourselves feel and experience and process yet. So just something to notice for yourself. I invite you to just take a moment and think about, what are areas in your life where you do tend to honor, events, milestones, thresholds, and then where do you maybe not tend to do that? And I'll give a simple example. I think a lot of us, especially if you're pretty, you're busy, you're pretty independent, you've got a lot going on, and you have pretty high expectations of yourself, you may not celebrate, you may not give yourself credit or give yourself a chance to celebrate your steps along the way as you're working on things, like projects or whatever it is. It's like, until, the 20,000 things that have to get done are done, I haven't succeeded yet. So there's no celebration allowed, right? Or it's dismissive, right? It's like, well, that's nothing. Everybody does that. Or, well, of course I did that. I have to. Or, that's just normal. Instead of really celebrating and enjoying the progress that you're making, whatever steps. And sometimes they're steps backward, but they really help us and teach us. And so those can be celebrated too. I think, celebration is something we don't want to just hold for certain. You can only celebrate these kinds of things, right? So to really let yourself enjoy and celebrate, and also take time to reflect and ask, like, what's next, or what do I want this next thing I'm stepping into to be like? What do I want to call in for that? What do I want to experience? How do I want to feel, right? That's a really helpful one. Instead of the how, right? We always like to jump to the how. How am I going to do it? What's going to, make it happen? And I'm saying this kind of, laughing at myself, because that's so me. Jump right in, let's get to it, And I'm a 3-5 and I'm like, let's just do something. We'll see, it'll be fine. And I often don't take the time to sit with it or I mean, I barely sit still, period. So it's, it's a challenge for me, but I want to keep getting better at this because I know when I do it, it helps. So yeah, so setting intention, right? Getting really clear, that's that direction piece, right? And then what do you need? What can be helpful? How can you be supported in this? What do you need to allow in? Like, getting into the love piece, right? Like, how can you be really kind and gentle with yourself through it? How can you be compassionate and not be so hard on yourself? And who can support you? Who can you reach out to? Those types of things. So let me just pause for a second and see. I haven't looked at the chat. Does anyone have any comments or questions they wanted to ask or share, maybe about how you're doing with celebrating or honoring these different experiences in life that we all go through? Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, Paula asked, how do the seasons apply to the mandala?
Oh, yeah. So when you look at the mandala, I'll actually go back to that slide. These 8 rays coming off here, those are the 8 gates from the G center. So it's these, 46, 10, 15, 25, 2, 7, 13, and 1. That's what all of these yellow spokes, if you think of it as spokes on a wheel, that's what these yellow spokes are. And those get activated as the sun moves around that mandala, right? The sun spends approximately 6 days in each hexagram as it travels around. So if you look at the one is here, that falls around the first day of winter. And then we move counterclockwise around this wheel. The 10 would be in the middle of the winter. So the 10 is gonna be activated around February 2nd-ish. I mean, this is, ish. And then the next one is the 13, and that kicks off then the next season. That would fall at the beginning of spring. That's when that gate would be activated by the sun, which means we would all be experiencing it at that same time, whether you have it defined or not. When the sun activates that gate, it would be activated for all of us. So, yeah, and it goes on around like that. So 4 of them, which make a cross, right, are the midpoints of the seasons. And then the other 4 that make another cross are the beginnings of each season. So thank you for asking me to clarify that. Someone, and then Lena said, I'm also 3-5 generator and find it very hard not to do things and also celebrate myself. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, we're generators. So yeah. And, can you let yourself take some time every once in a while to check in and to look at, like, sometimes even just writing it down. I mean, I know I'm one of those list people. So I write down the list and I love checking things off because it just makes me feel good. Like, look, did that. That's kind of a mini celebration for me. But I'm one of those people that if I do something that wasn't on my list, I write it on there and then mark it off. So you can do that. But also, sometimes I just have to remember, like, let me just take 5 minutes, right? I don't mean you have to have a big party, right? But take 5 minutes, like dance party by yourself. You can, take a minute to relax and do something you really enjoy. Just something to celebrate and recognize yourself. Because I think lots of times we don't give ourselves much acknowledgement. Okay, let me go back over here. As we think about the seasons, right, they do kind of have these themes. And these themes show up all the time in our lives, like starting something new, right? Or like really being in creation mode and creating a bunch of stuff. That's like when everything's growing, you know, that's the summertime. Everything is part of spring, but definitely summer, lots of growth, right? Harvesting in the fall, you know, that's bringing in what was created or what was, it's kind of the fruit of your labor, so to speak. And so, you know, in your business, that can be, you know, money coming in from some project that you created or offering that you had. And this is a great time. That's also about celebrating, right? Appreciating and celebrating what has come in from the work that you did. And then winter is, you know, more of a winding down. It's a going inward, a retreating, a contemplating, a reflecting, you know, more introspection. And I think, so I think that in life, we tend to go through these cycles a lot, not just when the actual seasons are happening, but if you think about them more as just cycles that we go through all the time, we are often, you know, having these ideas, right? There's spring, you know, all these ideas and planting the seeds. And that's really exciting. And there's a lot of anticipation, you know, and so we have this idea, and then we actually start working on it and making it, creating it, making it happen. And then we see the results of that. And then what we often do is we skip winter. We don't do that fourth phase of like, you know, retreating a little bit, going inward, like, okay, and taking a little time to recover, to kind of recenter, to you know, to come up with what's next. And instead of just jumping into spring again, the next thing, because winter, it doesn't mean that nothing's happening. So, you know, when I say winter, I think we often think of that as like stillness, like nothing's happening, you're just sitting on your butt. And so then our minds can start going to being lazy, or, you know, we have all these judgments potentially about it. And the truth is, in the winter, there's a lot with the, I keep doing this, like you can see, I'm looking out a window, but in the winter, a lot is still happening underground that we don't see. You know, it's kind of like that idea of the iceberg, right? Where you only see the tip. Well, the same thing with the trees and plants, right? All those roots go really deep. We see what's on top of the earth, but there's a lot happening underneath. And so a winter for us is the same thing. It's like, what's going on internally that maybe isn't visible to everyone else, but is super important for our growth and for the next season to be ready. So it's like a preparation time. And it's, you know, if you think about a little seedling in the ground, a lot is happening within that for it to actually be able to, by springtime, get to the top of the earth and come out and make it up and out. And then we see it, but it's done a lot of work to get there. And so it's not, I don't want you to think of winter as like you're doing nothing, because it's not true. You're doing really important preparation work to be ready for all the more active external that's going to come. So, you know, and just think about a lot of the other seasons and cycles and phases in your life, like, you know, the moon cycles, right? A lot of people pay attention to those because they happen so regularly, right? Every month. And then, I mean, in women, most women at some point in their lives have cycles, right? And we have cycles every day. I mean, you may have a morning routine, you know, we have morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and then nighttime. We have weekly cycles with the week and the weekend. We have phases of our lives like childhood, adolescence, then you know, your 20s, maybe you're single, then at some point you're partnered or married, and then maybe you become a parent, and then eventually you have an empty nest, and maybe you change career somewhere in there. You have later years, like there's all these phases of our lives. And so we can look at so many aspects of our lives and how those same types of phases show up. And you can create your own rituals or practices to just to put some consciousness into some of these cycles for yourself, these phases, like to create more intentionality and connection between you and whatever you're experiencing, the journey that you're on, because we have a lot of journeys through life, right? And sometimes we're going on multiple ones simultaneously. But if you don't have any idea where you're going, or how you feel about it, or how you feel about the people that you'll be sharing and encountering on your journey, then it might be a little more of a bumpy ride. You might get lost a few times. You know, you might run out of gas. So it's just this idea with these love and direction gates of, you know, slowing down enough to just notice and honor and celebrate, or simply acknowledge and mark these milestones or these accomplishments, these thresholds in your life. And again, they can be really small, they can be simple, or they can be elaborate. You know, it's whatever feels right for you for whatever it is. But anyway, I invite you to just play with that a little bit and see what comes up for you, and in what areas of your life you most would like to add this in, or pay more attention to. As a hand analyst, let's see what my next slide is. Oh, okay, perfect. So here's the G Center, the calibration center. And this is a slide of Karen's, or an image of Karen's here in the middle. And I've added these words around the outside. So in hand analysis, one of the key pieces that we look at, and well, let me back up and say the fingerprints are really critical to understanding in hand analysis a person's soul path or journey, because encoded within the fingerprints are pieces of information: the life school, which I'm going to explain in a minute, your life purpose, so who and what you came here to be or do, and then your life lessons, which are what you came here to learn. And your fingerprints are unique to you. They never change, right? That's why we use them for identification. But the cool thing is that they literally hold your identity, which I just think is so neat and cool. And, you know, they're formed 14 to 16 weeks in utero, and then they don't change. So they're with you for life, and they're different for every single person. So I just think they're just so beautiful, and that our bodies are freaking amazing. So, this, one of those pieces from the fingerprints is called the life school. And I want to talk about that one because I feel like it's really foundational, kind of like in human design, your type, right, is so foundational to who you are. And it's, you know, there are 4 main categories of types, and then within generator, there's 2. And so with life schools, there are 4 also. And the way I talk about life schools is that it's like your operating system. I like to say it's the filter or the lens through which you experience life. So they sort of color everything. And with each school, there are certain gifts, strengths, assets that are possible, and also certain challenges that are possible. So it's like this spectrum, and we kind of move, you know, through it, up and down and all around as we go through life, and we have experiences, and hopefully, you know, we learn and grow and gain wisdom as we go through them, and then we get new experiences to learn from. So the 4 schools, I have them listed: peace, love, wisdom, and service. And these are, you know, universal themes, right? So you know, Karen always says we all have all of the chart in human design, right? So I say the same thing with these schools, right? These apply to everyone to some degree, of course, because they are universal themes. And so, you know, the way I often talk about it is that everyone, if you think of the schools kind of like going to college, going to university, or getting a master's degree, you know, like everybody kind of has to take the basic foundational courses first. So everybody gets a life experience with peace, love, wisdom, and service. They apply to everyone. But then the school, based on your fingerprints that you're in, you can think of that as your major, or maybe you're getting a master's or a PhD in it, right? It's where you're meant to go deep and really learn and study that thing. So, and it takes a lot of practice, and there's just, you know, you're just going to go a lot deeper and have all kinds of ways to learn through that school. And each of the schools are related to the 4 elements. So earth, air, fire, and water. And they're also body, mind, heart, and spirit. So again, these patterns, right? And I love that. They also relate to the chakras. Like there's all the kinds of ways that we can link them. So as I was looking at the body graph and the mandala and curious about how peace, love, wisdom, and service might show up, and then it just hit me. I was like, oh, well, of course, the G center, right? Because that's kind of our identity. It goes back to identity. And of course, we would all have all of them. So I love that, it's like they each show up twice within the G center. And this is my interpretation. Like, I'm just playing with this. So if you don't agree, totally cool. You can interpret it however you choose. This is not set in stone by any means. This is just what I recently came up with for myself that makes sense to me. So do with it what you will, but I like looking at it this way, that we have all 4 of those that we all have access to and experience. And then the fact that as we go through the year, how they are every, keep wanting to say every quarter, but it's really every 8th of the year that that these are activated for all of us. So what else did I want to say about that? Oh, and just a note, I didn't point this out when we were looking at the mandala, but when one of the gates is activated by the sun, the one opposite it is activated by the earth. So we actually get 2 of these at a time, which is really cool. Okay, so let's look. Here's what I did. I took the 4 love gates first, and I just played with, okay, I took information that I already had in documentation for other things I've done using hand analysis, and just added it in here. So for each of the 4 love gates, I've put next to it what the gate is about, and in bold is Karen's quantum human design language, okay? And then I put all this information that I normally use to teach. I didn't change it. And then I put Karen's, her statement, which go back to the previous slide, she put on this graphic here for each of these gates, these statements. And so I just used those, and I just love how it all fit together so beautifully. So if we look at the gate 46, it's the love of the body, right? Embodiment. And if we look at the school of peace, it's really about finding balance within your body, the centering and grounding and being with yourself, getting comfortable being in your body. And that brings this security and calm and comfort, which then results in inner peace and this ability to be supportive of yourself, like to feel that you are supported and safe within your physical body. So that's a big part of what the School of Peace is about. And then, Karen's statement here is I embody, right? And so I love that. It's a great way to think about School of Peace. And then the next one, gate 10, love of the self, self-love. Well, with the School of Love, it's all about feeling all of your feelings, like letting yourself experience the full spectrum of emotions, being vulnerable and accepting yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, like whatever shows up, and to really, really love yourself. Because then you have this sense of connection, inner connection, and then also outer connection. It gives a sense of belonging and acceptance. And what's really important here is inner love and self-acceptance. Because School of Love, it's all about wanting others to accept you and not get rejected, but what comes first is loving and accepting yourself. And so then the statement from Karen is, I love, of course, right? And this is the heart. And then we go on to gate 15, love of humanity, extremes. And the quantum human language is, quantum human design is compassion. So School of Wisdom is a little trickier to explain, but it's all about trusting your inner wisdom and guidance that you already know enough that you can actually commit to something and take action on it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to worry about getting it right or wrong. It's more about the actual taking action on it, going with it. That's the most important, so that you don't just stay stuck in overanalyzing and inaction, in your head, right? This is the mental, this is the mind. So you choose, you make a decision, you go with it. And then when you do that, then you have movement, you have progress, you can have growth through the experience, not just the mental exercise, but to actually go through an experience and then learn from that. And then you have more inner wisdom and this idea of self-commitment, committing to yourself, that you are going to trust and put yourself out there. So then her statement fits so perfectly. I share, right? It's like you don't just keep it in your mind and keep trying to get it just so. Before you share it, you go ahead and share. And then you can always tweak it and keep going. Okay. Gate 25, love of spirit. Spirit. Okay, School of Service is all about spirit. So, but what's really important for people in the School of Service is self-care and having a spiritual practice, a way to really nurture yourself and care for yourself and serve yourself. Because it can be so easy in School of Service to be wanting to do everything for everybody else. You're wanting to serve others, but what about you? So when you take care of yourself really well and honor yourself, then you can really co-create with spirit and have more fulfillment, which brings this inner joy and this self-empowerment. School of Service is very much about empowerment. And then Karen's statement, I serve, right? So you can see how they all fit so beautifully together. And if we go on to the direction gates, we have, I'm not going to read through. So for peace, love, wisdom, and service, the schools, it's the same as before. I didn't change anything. It's that same information, but we're just looking at 4 different gates. So the gate 2 is receiving. This is allowing, right? And with School of Peace, it's really about allowing yourself to be in the present moment, to know that everything is going to be okay. You are not alone. You don't have to do all these crazy things to fix everything, and it's not an emergency. You can just relax and be, because you are supported. And that's Karen's statement here. I am supported. And then we have the gate 7, Army, democracy, collaboration is the new quantum human design language, which is quite different, right? Collaboration, I love that. And with School of Love, it really is about connecting with others, because often in School of Love, it can be easy to go into people pleasing and not really expressing yourself authentically, and sort of disconnecting or feeling disconnected, worrying about being disconnected. And so you're not really being you. And that it does create that disconnect. So I love the idea of collaboration, like coming together, being willing to open yourself enough to connect with others and bring together. And then her statement is, I am powerful. And then the gate 13, the listener, narrative is the new language. So I love this because it's about telling a new story, but it's also about, the listening is still there, right? You have to know what the old story was to tell a new one. And so it's really listening and paying attention. And I think the listening can also be for, what is the new story? Like, what's coming in now? What is it now? And for wisdom, again, there's this idea of always wanting to get things right, to be, quote, perfect, to not make any mistakes. And so there can be a lot of judgment and very harsh, criticism. And so I love her statement of, I am forgiving, because it's all about like going easier on yourself, right? I know on the previous slide, extremes for the gate 15, right? Wisdom is often, people in the School of Wisdom can get into trouble with this idea of like, it's either perfect or it's crap. These extremes, instead of like, no, it's all good. Like, imperfection is part of the deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. So forgiving, yes, forgive yourself. And then you can have that. You can create that new story. You don't have to be stuck in the old one of, well, I screwed that up one time. So what? And then gate 1, creative, self-expression, purpose. Yeah. So School of Service, it is all about really putting out what you're here to do in the world, what in co-creating with spirit. And so it's this very strong, it's simple, but it's so powerful and strong. The statement is, I am. It's like, here I am. This is me. This is my purpose. Me being me. Here I am. So I love that. And I love how these can fit together in this way. So now I'm not going to go through these because there's not time, but I just had information about each school that we're not going to go through. But I do want to tell you about, let me back up. I'm going to go all the way back to here. So in playing with these, I have done this before where I've played with the peace, love, wisdom, and service. And then I played with the, body, mind, heart, spirit, and the chakras and the elements, and just, how all of that is, how we need all 4 of them, regardless of the school you're actually in from your fingerprints, but how important all 4 of them are in life and in, I think, doing things. If we go back to the idea of cycles, right? It's kind of like having the spring, summer, fall, and winter, that we kind of need to bring all of those in for whatever project we're doing, for whatever thing we're working on in life, to bring all of them. So I created a program years ago around all of that. I want to completely revamp it because now human design, I want to add all of that in, which is it's gonna take me some time. But in the meantime, I was thinking about like what's really important when we look at these different components and the idea of these phases or cycles. And the one that comes up so often when I'm working with clients, and there's a lot of markings that I see in the hands that can be supportive for this, but can also, or can be challenging, different markings, different ways. And then also now looking at human design, receiving. So especially women, I find, tend to have more of a challenge around receiving. And part of that is because we historically have been much more the caretakers, right? And men have historically kind of run a lot of things in the Western world for quite a while now. And so receiving, there's so many mixed messages. There's all kinds of stuff that we hear all the time that we've been conditioned. It's better to give than to receive. And, that there's this idea of sometimes of ambition or wanting or desire being bad in some way. There's, it shows up around asking for money for your work, for your services. It shows up, think about like when someone gives you a compliment, are you able to just say thank you and not say anything else? Or do you immediately give a compliment back, right? Because some of us are really conditioned that you are obligated, like you've got to return it immediately because otherwise you owe the person, or it's like somehow lopsided, or it's the nice thing to do, right? We're taught to be nice. And the truth is, with a compliment, the other person, if they're doing it out of the right place, they're giving a compliment because they want to give that to you. So when you dismiss it and go, oh, that's nothing, or you immediately go, oh yeah, I like your shirt too, right? It kind of takes that away. It doesn't give them that gift of being generous and kind. And so, think about it when it's on the other foot, when you're doing something nice or complimenting and someone won't take it, right? And so it's just recognizing how often we don't take, we don't allow, we don't receive. People try to offer help and we're like, no, I've got it, or no, And I can go way more in depth, and I could talk for days on this. And in fact, that's what I want to share with you, is that I haven't taught this class in a few years, but I'm really feeling called to teach it again, because it is our time. It is our time to be, to allow in, to let things come in, and so that we can really do what we want to do in the world. You know, the more we allow in, the more we're able to receive and have in the world, the more of a voice we will have. And I think it's really important. And I don't want it to be so hard to be able to get support, to be able to receive compensation for what you put out there. I want us all to really do better with our receiving. And one of the things that happened for me, I actually took a receiving course, gosh, I don't know, it was eight or so years ago, and it changed my life. I've always been super independent. I'm definitely a do-it-myself kind of person, and it changed so much for me. I still do a lot of stuff myself, but it's different now, because it's by choice instead of just this crazy wall I put up. I didn't realize how much I was repelling people energetically and other ways, until I took this class, and it all shifted, and it turned things upside down for me, because I couldn't believe how differently people just behaved around me, and how many things started coming my way and just showing up, and people giving me things, and like it was almost embarrassing. But I so much shifted my energy and started allowing things in, and that's what I want for you, is to have that same experience, because all are here to receive and to give, and it doesn't have to be to the same person. It's a pay it forward, however you want to do it, but we need to give and receive. It's like a figure eight, you know, it's like an infinity. It's giving and receiving and giving and receiving. It can't be lopsided, or it doesn't work. So what I want to share with you is that I'm offering my gift of receiving program again. And it is going to be, I'm going to be updating it, because I want to add in human design now, but it's going to start in early July. I do not have the exact dates for you yet, but I will have that soon. But it'll be weekly sessions live, you know, Zoom. And I'll go over a lot of material each week, different aspects of receiving, and then there will be, you know, exercises, there's going to be handouts, there's going to be a lot that you can do and interact with one another, and practices to do in between sessions to really, so you can start seeing the change. You can start implementing what you're learning and seeing how it shows up. And then there will be a Q&A. I mean, there'll be Q&A every class, but like there will be one at the end, just all Q&A to go over whatever's coming up for you. And because I so want all of you to be really comfortable and confident with receiving, so that you can just do whatever you want in the world, and not feel like you're pushing. I'm offering half off. So the code for half off is QAS50. That gives 50% off. The regular price is going to be $250. That's going to be the full price. So you can get it for $125 with the half off. And the website is here, BeYouReallyAre.com/receiving 2021. And I just put that page up like yesterday. It's not done yet, but it's working. There's some information there. If you want to talk to me to get more information, feel free. I'm happy to talk with you about it if you need more details, and then what's on that page. But the other thing that before we got on today, I just felt like really, it just came to me, and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. You can bring a friend, because I want as many people as possible to get better at receiving. And it's also fun to do this with someone else, because you can practice with each other and you can kind of share the journey together. I will be talking about in this program, how markings in the hands relate. You don't have to know everything in your hands. Don't worry. If you haven't had a hand analysis session, it's okay. It will still all be helpful. Same with human design. You don't have to know everything about human design for what I talk about with human design to be helpful. I'll make it just like today. You don't have to know anything about your hands, right? So, and of course, if you are interested in a hand analysis session or human design session, we can talk about that. But this is all about receiving, and you can bring a friend. So if you sign up and you want to bring someone, you can gift it to them. You can share the price, the cost with them. However, I'm going to leave that up to you to do what works, what makes sense for you. But I would love to have you. I would love to get to know you better and see what you're up to in the world. And that's it. So you can email me or sign up for a session with me if you want to talk about this or anything else that might be a fit for you. But I'm so appreciative that you're here, and I know we're almost out of time. So my website is bewhoyoureallyare.com, and I'll get Cindy put in the chat the link for what time of day. Okay, yes, great question. I haven't decided that yet, and I know that may influence if you can do it or not, and I get that. And I also know people are all over the world. So I want to make it at a time that works best for the most people. So I'm probably going to be checking in with what works, and I might even do 2 groups if we need one at an earlier time of day and one at a later time to be able to, get the most people able to access live, because that's what I know it's nice to be live. So any other questions about that? I know I went kind of fast. There's so much I could have shared so much. I just want to share and talk because I get so excited about this stuff. But I hope that was helpful, and definitely, look at where in your life you can celebrate more and give yourself space when you need it, because it's not all about like rah yay, right? Like give yourself space when you need the space for whatever feelings are coming up, for grief, for anger, the stuff that people aren't as comfortable with sometimes, because the more you can let that stuff process, the better.
Getting lots of thank you very much. There was a person that said they really liked how you correlated the schools to the G Center, how you connected,
Yeah, and
I mean a little bit on Facebook, but
yeah, please do. I don't do Facebook. I'm looking quickly now through the chat on Zoom.
Okay, so maybe this could be the last question. Nanette just put in, did you mention if your G Center is defined with no gates or undefined with no gates?
Okay.
I mean, will that make a difference on how it's I'm adding that, but it was, did you mention if the G Center is, if it's undefined with no gates? So.
Right. Yeah. So great question. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, it can make a difference for sure in general, but the way that I would like you to think about it, because I don't want anyone to feel like, oh no, because I don't have that gate, or I do have this gate, then it means this for me, and so therefore this is my thing. I really want you to recognize that we do have the opportunity, based on who you're around, right, who may have it defined, in which case they have defined, you have the opportunity to experience those energies in that way. But also, as I mentioned, as we go through the year, there are those approximately 6 days that each of those gates will be activated, whether you have it defined or not. And so, and at that point, we all get to experience that when the sun activates it. And so, it might be an interesting thing for you, if yours is undefined with none of the gates, to actually chart that out and see when those get activated, what shows up for you. How does that feel different? Is there a different experience for you based on what that gate is about? And really tuning into that, and maybe keeping a journal about it just to see. And I would love to know too, because mine is defined. And so I don't know for sure what that's like when it's undefined. I do know that, where you are and who you're around is going to be greatly influential, and that your direction may change a lot. And that's normal for you. you know, and to really like embrace that and enjoy that versus thinking of it as, you know, some kind of problem, because it's not, it's the way you're designed. So, and we can learn a lot, you know, those of us who have it defined can learn from you around that, you know, because we're a little more consistent in that area. So just thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it. I'm sending you lots of love and just have fun playing with all this stuff, right? It's like here to discover and explore and experience for ourselves in whatever way feels right for us. So thank you. Mwah. Enjoyed this time.